Good evening. Welcome to our residents and to the Honorable Mayor and members of the Enfield Town Council who are joining us this evening to hear the manager's proposed fiscal budget year 2021. I would first like to start off by thanking Chris Drezek of the Board of Education and his reassessment of his submission to us on his budget from earlier this year. When Chris Drezek, the superintendent, submitted the budget at that time, we had not felt the impact, nor did we have any idea that we'd be facing a worldwide pandemic. In recognition of that, his initial request for this year's 2021 fiscal budget for the Board of Ed was a 2.6% increase totaling $1.8 million. We have had discussions with him, collaborations with him, and he has resubmitted for the purposes of this presentation a new budget for the Board of Education, which represents a 0% increase. There has been a shared sacrifice by the Board of Education and the town of Enfield in presenting this year's budget to reflect the dire circumstances we find ourselves in today. We have a partnership. We work well with the superintendent and the Board of Ed, and he has posted or will be posting at the end of this presentation, as we will be on our website, a statement explaining his thinking and his thought process in making that very difficult decision, and we thank him for it. Before I proceed, I would like to thank John Wilcox, our finance director, and Kasha Perciello for their hard and diligent work in preparing this year's budget. And with that, we'll proceed. The FY 2020 adopted budget last year was approximately $137 million, and that represents both the town and the Board of Education spending. The proposed 2021 budget has increased to approximately $138,900,000. The total value change for this year is approximately $1.8 million, or 1.36% increase from last year's budget. You can see the breakdown below on the pie, which is usually about what it has been in the past. Board of Education 51.6%, and the town's remaining 48.4%. The increase in this year's 2021 fiscal budget is accounted for by the following increases. Firstly, as I indicated, the Board of Education has come in with a 0 flat rate increase. However, much like last year, the state has a minimum budget requirement. And after the state adopts their budget, we know exactly what it is, but we're basing it upon approximately what we returned to the board last year after the budget process. And this year, we're hoping it will be about the same, around $400,000. The town will experience an increase in debt service this year. This is for Roads 2015 and the high school project in the amount of $1.4 million. There comes a time, and I won't get into the specifics because it's complicated, but that when we borrow bonds, there's a time that you renegotiate them, sort of like a refinancing. So it leaves that process and then enters the budget stream for the town, and we have to account for it in our budget process. So that occurred this year, and even though we have very favorable low premiums and interest rates, the increase to this year's budget for the Roads 2015 and high school project is approximately $1.4 million. So the total increase is 1.8. How did we pay for this, or how will we pay for this going forward next year? The first portion of the increase will be paid for by the increase in our grand list from 2019. The increase was approximately $733,000, and then we have increased the use of our fund balance by $1.1 million approximately, and that will cover that $1.8 million increase. The increase from the general fund, from the fund balance, was occasioned by favorable increases in revenues from last year's budget, which we are fortunate enough to have this year to use towards this $1.8 million increase. Now, the town also, like the Board of Education, has had to absorb non-discretionary increases in our budget, like your household and others, where you see an increase in insurances and perhaps household oil or gas or things of that nature. The town also has those fixed costs that are non-discretionary, mandatory increases that we have to address. The first being our pension, with an increase in our obligation of approximately $577,000, a health insurance increased cost in our premium, which is about 17.5%. Other towns and cities have also experienced that increase. We are self-funded, And despite the fact that this past year, we had a savings per member. It was down 1.7%, the cost of members using our health care. And despite the fact that the plan cost was down 2.1%, and we've increased wellness visits by 6.3%, due to the market variations and increases in the industry, we have to absorb a 17.5% increase despite our good trends in health care. The next is contractual union increases in wages, accounting for about $348,000. And I will note, without getting into great detail, most unions and non-union last year agreed to a 0% cost increase, and that was as a result of the very dire state budget a couple of years back. We also have to pay an increased disposal fees for trash. It is increasing from $73 a ton to $80 a ton. Although this is an increase, it is a very favorable one. Public Works went out to bid, and despite the fact, because of issues in waste recovery and changes in the market, it was anticipated the cost might go up to $120 per ton. So it is a multi-year contract, and in the first year it will be $80.50 per ton, and it increases $1 or $2 over the next 2 years. This next slide shows the state revenue from the governor's budget. The first, the pilot, which is payment in lieu of taxes. This is on state-owned property in the town, primarily Department of Corrections properties and facilities. We received $655,000, or we did last year. Pilots for colleges and hospitals, and that really represents for his Nantucket and other nonprofits. Local, that was $17,200. Local capital improvement, or LoCIP, from the state is $323,000. Town aid to roads, $534,000. Grants for municipal projects, $256,000. The Mashantucket, Pequot, and Mohegan grant, $1.2 million. Our education cost sharing, the base entitlement, which is the largest share to our education, is approximately $29 million. And then for adult education, we receive approximately $103,000. That totals $32,667,674. Now, we left that flat. That was what we received last year. The governor's proposed budget for this year shows an increase of 1.2% from FY20, but we wanted to be on the conservative side, so we're keeping it flat, given the realities of COVID-19 and what the state may do when they adopt their budget after we've already concluded ours. Well, as part of our budget, we have our standard operating costs, the cost of doing business, providing our services, but also we invest in our infrastructure each year, and that's called the Capital Improvement Program. So the following is highlights from those items that we were able to fund this year that are really absolutely imperative. And I will tell you, for perspective, from all of our departments, the total combined request for CIP, and we've composed a list of priorities, is over $16 million. Despite that, this year, normally we fund around $5 million, this had to be a very stark budget. So the following items we are going to fund for the following reasons. We need to, and we're under really basically an obligation to remove an underground gasoline tank at the police department. It'll cost approximately $105,000 to do that, and Mr. Wilcox has been putting aside $30,000 a year to accomplish that this year, so $30,000 will be funded for that. The Central Library chimney needs to be repaired for $50,000. The Alcorn boiler needs to be replaced at a cost of $300,000. And I will just note that is imperative because we've been spending approximately $40,000 a year to repair it because of severe leakages there. So this is something that can't wait any longer. We need to do a handicap lift at the annex pool at the cost of $10,000. Freshwater Pond, there was some news reporting on this earlier in the year about the overflow. We've had a recent inspection. We've been working closely and reached out to DEEP. We were going to do that project in 3 or 4 years from now, and we've been saving money each year to do that. However, given the immediacy of it, we are funding the entire project this year, and we'll complete it this year at a cost of $350,000. Miscellaneous architectural and engineering, it's $110,000. This is money we need to have so that when we have projects such as we did that are unexpected, such as Orlando Drive last year, year. We need to go out and make emergency repairs. We have the money to have architects do the drawings and engineers figure out the plans for us. Our contribution to roads 2015 from the town budget, in addition to that, which is what we bond, is $176,000. We have included this year something that might seem like it's discretionary, but it really isn't. It's a $300,000 investment, of which we think we will be eligible for about 70% reimbursement from the state because it's at a school for a bathroom, unisex bathroom for boys and girls at the Stowe Early Learning Center. I will just give you a little recap why we think that's imperative. Is we asked an extraordinary thing of all of the educators at Stowe and from Head Start when we combined those two programs at the Stowe building. We gave them and we promised to give them everything they needed in regard to resources and equipment to help them adjust to the absorption of 120 new students there. We increased parking significantly in the gravel area. We did parking in the front that was paved. We gave temporary air conditioning at that site, and we were converting that primarily based on Honeywell dollars that we have as credits to put a permanent system in. We installed an additional faculty bathroom, and we promised that because of the increased students, they had a real deficit of bathrooms for the children. We made the promise, due to their extraordinary efforts in bringing this and making this project a success, that we would help them in that area, and I would like to keep that promise, so we've included that bathroom. Additionally, at Stowe, because we have so many youngsters there are two boilers that are in dire need. They have long since expired their useful life, and we're going to make that commitment so that we don't have young children and infants without heat during the winter months at Stowe and at the Head Start Center. So those two boilers will be replaced completely at the cost of $400,000. The VRP is a vehicle replacement program. The town did a projection several years ago that we've been trying to abide by for replacing police vehicles, DPW light and medium trucks, DPW heavy trucks, buses and vans throughout our departments. We have tried to adhere to that. We did last year, but unfortunately we will have to defray that, and we are only funding at a total cost of $195,000, of which $43,000 will be put aside in this budget for a new ambulance chassis to keep our ambulance fleet and public safety efficient and safe for those that we transport. We did one last year and the year before, and we need to stick to that schedule for ambulances in the interest of public safety. Lastly, because of the high use and the critical nature of the services provided, we're also funding, lastly, the senior center roof at a cost of $50,000. That total this year then for CIP will be $2,046,635. I think just as importantly, critically, and sadly, I wanted to include some of the projects that we will not be able to do this year and will have to be deferred. One is due to remediation concerns and abatement, Hazardville windows and window walls at that school at a cost of $2.4 million. We were going to commence a multi-phase school parking lot replacement program, and if you're a parent or a teacher and have been to these schools, you need to know it's sadly needed. That's a cost of $350,000. We need to replace both of the turf fields at the annex and the high school at a cost of $1.2 million. The Enfield Annex Pool needs a dehumidification and heating unit replacement, cost of $300,000. The Annex Tennis Court replacement was to be $85,000. There has to be a tank removal for an underground tank at Prudence Crandall of $300,000 that will be deferred. There were two projects that council was considering, Summers Road and Moody Road, $1.6 million. We were going to do that ahead of the referendum. And a Hazardville Memorial roof at the cost of $2 million, and that would have totaled $8,554,000. All of those projects will have to be deferred. Additionally, there were requests made from our department directors, who I would state did a very earnest and thoughtful job in their budgets to help us come in at a 0% increase. These were requested, but I had to remove. There was a grants manager position at Social Services to help us garner and get state and federal grants, which obviously would have offset the cost of us providing services. That was a $101,000 position. There was a submission by our chief of EMS to increase by two EMTs in the EMS department at a cost of $139,000, with hopes of reducing overtime and also increasing call volume to area towns, thus increasing our revenues. We made the decision to not replace, and I will just state we are very thankful to Deputy Chief Hall, who postponed his retirement, which he has earned and is long overdue after so many years of service to the town. But given the current pandemic, he agreed to stay on for the foreseeable future. But when he does retire, the police department will now proceed with 3 administrators, a chief, and 2 captains, and that will be a savings of $41,000 approximately. We will keep the number of patrol officers and the actual count of officers at 95 in some shape or form, but it would be somebody being returned to the road. We will not be continuing with our road engineer, who has been doing a fantastic job on the Road 2015 project, but because, as you will see later, we're not going to be doing a 2020 referendum, that job will now expire at a cost of $118,000. There was a social services IT program, which is going to be highly efficient to help us track and be more efficient, of $60,000. And then, of course, there will be no roads referendum 2020 to complete the roads that we have been, basically scotch taping over the last few years and repairing and doing some paving, and that would have completed the projects in town, but that will have to be deferred. And again, it says no roads, but it's no roofs referendum 2020. We had also looked at a concurrent path on roads and roofs. I mentioned previously we were going to try to do Summers Road and Moody and then do a referendum for the larger portion. Likewise, we were going to do Hazardville roof in our regular budget and then include other school and town roofs in a referendum package to get us up to speed, but that will have to be deferred to a future date. That brings us to the important fact that we will have no tax increase this year. $0 increase is a zero increase. The mill rate, the FY20 mill rate was 34.23 mills. That will be the mill rate if this budget is adopted for FY21 of 34.23 mills. So there will be no increase in the mill rate under my budget. And just a brief explanation of what the mill rate is. Basically, we charge $34.23 for every $1,000 of taxable value. We tax 70% of market value of a property as established by the town assessor's office. So, for instance, a home in Enfield worth $200,000 will be taxed at 70% of that. And based on the mill rate of 34.23 of last year and this year, your taxes will remain at $4,792. Again, no increase for a household this year. This is a look at the historical increase of the mill rate, and most telling and importantly, at the end, you can see 2020 was the increase of 34.23. That will remain flat for the 2021 proposed budget of 34.23. I think this chart is helpful. It tells you how we pay, how do we pay for the budget in its totality. This is the breakdown. Taxes account for the lion's share, approximately of $100 million. That's the blue portion of the pie. That comes from our town property, motor vehicle, personal property taxes. The next is $31 million for intergovernmental revenues, and again, that is money that we receive from the state and sometimes from federal funds that go directly to specific programs. Charges for services that we generate, about $1,300,000 a year. Investment income, approximately $684,000. Fines and forfeitures, and some of this is for blight and other types of fines, is $12,000 a year. Licenses and permits is approximately $637,000, and that's conveyance taxes and things we receive primarily in the clerk's office. Intergovernmental funds, those are transfers within the town budget of approximately $640,000, and that is some money, for instance, that when we charge for outside services for use of our police and our police vehicles, we generated income, and that's what that represents. Also, the fund balance, and we're going to elaborate upon this shortly, the use of the fund balance this year will be $3.3 million, and that will account for the total 100% of our FY 2021 proposed budget in the amount of $138,911,188. So where does that money go? Similarly, in past years, 52% or $2,400 or $2,474 goes to education. Then you can see the breakdown, 12% to Public Works, 10% to Public Safety, that's police and EMS, other transfers to run recreation and the senior center, other town programs, general government, and it diminishes down to our debt service, pensions, development services, and then some other miscellaneous, and that accounts for the use of your tax dollars. Our budget timeline will remain the same, despite the fact that the state has given some discretion and flexibility to the towns to extend their budget process. We would like to conclude it and have our residents know and have stability and consistency so we can move on to addressing the other dire issues that confront us. So today, April 15th, I am introducing and proposing this budget to the town council. They will have deliberations where they will be able to ask questions of directors on the budget, and they will have the budget book, and we will make that available as well to the public. That will occur on April 22nd. We will have a public hearing on April 29th. Of course, it'll be different than in past years where we were able to get together and see each other and ask questions in person. The town attorney is working with Kasha, our assistant manager, to come up with compliance in the spirit and the letter of the governor's executive orders and to how we can best have people give public input to the budget process, and that will be announced shortly. Then on May 6th or 7th, those are tentative dates. There will be council deliberations on the budget. They can make changes, additions, or deletions, and then the budget shall be adopted no later than May 20th of 2020. The budget then would become effective July 1st of 2020. So these are some highlights, and I think they are important, positive highlights. Our town pensions are funded at 95%. The police pension is funded at 92.2%. Very, very high, much higher in contrast than what the state of Connecticut has done over the last several years. Our Standard & Poor's AA rating allows us to borrow money at a very low rate. Last year, we borrowed monies for the roads projects and for the WPC project, the high school, and going forward for JFK at historic low interest rates, some just over 1%. The fund balance, as you've seen, we're using this year over $3 million from it. What is the fund balance? I think it's important to note that due to the careful stewardship of councils and over the last many decades in Enfield, we have a fund balance unassigned, which means it's money, it's a rainy day fund in the bank, as of June 30th of $25,660,000. Now, under our rules, and I won't get into them, the fund balance has restrictions so that we will always keep in reserve and not spend or allocate a level of $12,900,000. So budget usage, which is available, which is unassigned, but is the pool apart from that, represents about $10,700,000. As we've said, last year we used out of the unassigned fund balance approximately $2.5 million. This year we are using $3.3 million, and again we had greater than expected revenues last year, so we were able to utilize them. So our remaining unassigned fund balance this year, even after our investment of $3 million for the CIP that we talked about, remains at a very healthy, just shy of $7 million. So we will have $12.5 million in reserve for a rainy day fund that we will not touch, but we have available for this next year, which could be uncertain, of $7 million that we could use in emergencies, such as if the state budget for some reason is drastically cut, we would have that money to offset it as we've had to do in past years. A couple of other notables, the Honeywell cost, we say cost avoidance, it basically was a savings after implementing Honeywell technologies across the town. Last year in the 2019 saved us about $849,000. There will be a new updated report this June, and we hope to realize savings again. We had received an Eversource credit. We're listing this year, we're hopeful of an FY21, and we're pretty sure of this for the following reason of $250,000, because in April of 2018, we received $1.6 million in rebates from Eversource, which was about $462,000 over what was anticipated. So Mr. Wilcox prudently put that money in deferred revenues, and we've been using it over the last 3 years and this year at the rate of about $250,000 a year, and we expect to do so this year as well. We are happy to announce that we are going to be able to restore senior center hours, additional new hours, Mondays 5 to 8 p.m., which was requested by the users of the senior center. We were able to do that because of the smart management of the senior center and increased revenues there that will offset this increase. It will pay for itself, in other words. Again, we're going to do, because of public safety, we will remount an ambulance chassis. And I say over the last couple of years, we've been very careful and efficient. We haven't bought new ambulances outright, which cost today almost $500,000. Instead, we re-chassis them at a lower cost, but it allows us for maintenance and getting many more years out of the ambulances. Lastly, as I alluded to earlier, the Stowe Early Learning Center bathroom at a cost of about $300,000, which again, we hope we will be reimbursed by the state, and we will put in all necessary fund applications to be reimbursed, hopefully approximately 70% of that. Now we turn to water pollution control. As you know, a few years back, this was spun off outside the general fund at the really insistence of DEEP and on recommendation of our consultant Woodard and Curran. The FY 2020 adopted budget was a total of $5.4 million approximately, $4.3 million in operating, $1.1 million in capital. The proposed 2021 budget is a total of $5.8 million. That is comprised of $4.7 million in operating costs and $1.1 million in capital, for a total of $5.8 million approximately, and this represents on total a 6.4% increase. Where does that come from? Well, on the operating side, we have included half of a position. This Water Pollution Control Center is being upgraded. I'm going to address that in a moment, and it will be online in October. A NOVAC study indicated that we need to commit additional people for maintenance and for running the Water Pollution Control Center to protect our investment. It will be online in October, so we're including a half-year cost of an employee there at the cost of about $42,000. Interest to date on monies that we have borrowed for the water pollution control have been about $200,000 a year. That is included. And then, again, in the operating costs, just like on the town side, there's been a $93,000 increase in health insurance costs and mandatory union pay increases of about $36,000. So that comprises the increases on the operating side. There is a decrease of about $70,000, as you can see, in the capital, and that really represents investment that we've made on CIP, which is pump stations and street realigning and other infrastructure that we will again do the minimum, and it will be deferred. The total cost of our upgrade to have a state-of-the-art water pollution control center, which will be reopened hopefully, and of course the caveat is the COVID-19 virus. It has caused inconvenience, delay, and some concern there, just as you can imagine, of workers and being present and others from contractors being unavailable, supply perhaps interruptions, but we're still on track to open in October of this year, and we're hopeful we will be able to do that. The cost of the upgrade is as follows. We have received a loan from the Clean Water Fund in the amount of $23 million at 2%. We receive a Clean Water Fund grant, and that's a grant that we receive that we don't have an obligation to repay, in the amount of $5.6 million, and that is given to us as a reimbursement as we continue to pay for the improvements each month as they're made. And then we received a one-time Department of Corrections payment of $2.5 million under our memo of understanding for them to use our water pollution control center from their DOC operations. And then lastly, we have bonded and some other funding sources in the amount of $4.6 million. That's the total upgrade of $36 million. Last year, the actual adopted budget for 2020 was a base rate, which was $30 per quarter, and a volumetric usage charge, and it's split depending on usage, but it's $3.49 and then increases to $5.24. On the right, I'm telling you what I'm doing this year. My recommendation, again, is no increase. It would remain flat at $30 per quarter for the base rate, and the volumetric usage charges will remain at $3.40 and $5.24, respectively. However, we've included the center chart, which was the recommendation by our consultant as to what we needed to increase these by on a yearly basis to make the plant sustainable. And their recommendation for this year would have been that we have a volumetric at 3.6 and 5.39, and also a base rate on a quarterly basis of $42 per quarter. You need to know that by remaining stable and by not making the increase, these are the implications when we reach next year's budget of 2022. This is what we know. Our proposed FY21 rate will generate $6.9 million approximately. However, next year, the chickens come home to roost. The cost of the operating budget will be $5.8 million. However, the Clean Water Fund loan kicks in and becomes due. The Clean Water Fund loan, as I said before, is 2%. It is a 20-year loan in the amount of $23 million. Next year, we will start the repayment, and that will increase by $1.6 million a year. Second, the bonding will become due. We have a 20-year loan of approximately $4.7 million at a low interest rate, but that will commence and be effective next year. That repayment for the 20 years will start at the rate of $300,000 a year. We also continue to make a repayment to the general fund of $250,000. That is money previously because this water pollution control was unable to sustain itself, so the general fund loaned money. The total of that loan was $3.5 million. We have been paying it back on a yearly basis, and as the end of FY 2020 approaches, we will have paid back $1.9 million. But we still have the balance of $1.5 million approximately to pay, and this $250,000 will go towards it. We have also included, pursuant to the NOVAC recommendation, for 4 operator positions. As I said, we'll get into that in greater detail, to keep this plant working, to keep it efficient, and to make the investment in the resources of personnel so that our $36 million investment lasts us for the next 50 years. The cost of those positions would be, with benefits and pay, $222,000 approximately. So our FY 2022 need will be $8,200,000. So as you can see, that will be an increase and a difference of $1.2 million next year. So based upon that, I'm letting you know again, on the left is my proposed 2021 water pollution control rate schedule, keeping the quarterly base charge flat at $30 per quarter, the volumetric the same. If you go over to the right, and I'm going to skip ahead, you can see an option that council will have during deliberations, because when you look at the 2022 proposed, based on the shortfall I just told to you, we will have to increase in one fell swoop, if we don't have an increase this year, the quarterly base charge to $48 per quarter, and the volumetric will go to $370 and $556. So while we would experience 0% increase this year, next year's proposed budget would have an $83 increase per household. So on the right, for council's consideration, I have included what they could do this year is to split that, and instead of adopting my flat rate budget, they have the alternative of perhaps increasing in this year's budget the quarterly base charge to $39 and increasing volumetric to $360 and $539, and then reducing the impact in FY 2022 to then reach the $48 per quarter and the $370 and $556. That would amount to an increase per household of approximately $42 in this budget and $42 in the 2020 budget, and avoid having to absorb an increase of $83 all at once. I have recognized I have done my recommendation based on the circumstances we find ourselves, the high unemployment rates, the uncertainty of what our tax collections will be, and all other manner of things that we can't predict. So erring on the side of caution and understanding the pain and sacrifice our residents are making, that is our recommendation for this year's budget. So in conclusion, we would like to thank you for your attention, and we would just like to add on a personal note that we appreciate the sacrifice, the patience, and understanding of our residents during these very difficult times, especially given the closing of some town facilities and the difficulties in providing services as we have been able to do in the past. I want you to know both at the Board of Education and on the town side, our employees strive and pride themselves on delivering the highest quality of town services in an efficient and cost-effective manner. We'll continue to do that. And we also, with particularity, would like to thank you for your observance of the social distancing, allowing us to keep all of our parks and fields and open spaces available to people, especially as the better weather comes. I would just say we were experiencing a very strong economic growth period in the town of Enfield prior to this virus. And I fully expect, like the country, when this subsides, that we will have a resurgence and a very strong rebound from this in the town of Enfield that will put all of this behind us. I think that our best days are yet to come. And again, be safe, be well, and thank you for your attention this evening. Good night.